Welcome to Monet Cafe. I'm artist Susan Jenkins, and I'm glad you're here, subscribers, artists, and patrons. Today's lesson will be on painting a chickadee, and I'll give some instruction on birds in general, and I'll be using PastelMat. This is a surface I've never used before. I just got it for Christmas, and I'm also using some Terry Ludwig pastels. I want to give a little quick tip here, though. This little tray is an older pastel box that I'm repurposing. I cut out some little foam pieces to put in between the sections that were already divided, and it makes a great little studio tray to be able to use while you're working. And here is the photo of the cute little chickadee. He was so chunky and cute. I got it from pmp-art.com. It's a great site with free reference material for artists to use, and it's great when it's a subject matter you can't get a photo of yourself. I don't have a chickadee in my backyard. Now, if you're seeing this version, that's some bird sketches I did, and I will show you how to do that. If you're seeing this version, it means you're one of my patrons. This is the extended content version. Okay, here is my PastelMat that I'm opening up for the first time, and I'm so excited because I've never even had this product in my hands. I'm not even sure what to expect. And I was actually, you see it comes in various colors, I was actually very surprised that it doesn't have really a sanded surface at all. It has these little, that's the white, it has these little sheets of glassine over each page, and you can see the different colors there. But the surface is rather smooth, but there's something about it that works very well with pastels. All right, now here is my little quickie bird drawing demo. To get a general shape of a bird, in this case the little chickadee I'm doing, I did the two circles, one for the body, one for the head. I'm speeding this up because it would get kind of monotonous. See how I divided that little circle for the head into quadrants, and then the beak goes on the middle quadrant, horizontal quadrant, the eye goes behind that. You can kind of watch this for a general idea of how to draw a chickadee. And but basically, I wanted to keep that plumpness. I liked the fact that he was all like in his winter feathers, I guess you could say. He was fluffed up. And anyway, so this is just a little piece of charcoal that I'm using here. I like drawing with charcoal because it's kind of in the pastel family, and I can kind of blend with it a little to get my values. I can do a better value study with charcoal than I can with pencil. And so that's why I kind of like playing around with charcoal when I do a sketch. So this is the general idea. It was a multi-purpose, one to get me kind of warmed up, general drawing of the chickadee, and then the other was just to give some instruction on drawing or painting a bird. Okay, I'll speed up this drawing just a little bit more, but it is a good idea if you are going to paint a bird to do a few sketches of them. Also maybe look at some other birds of the same variety. Do some drawings like that drawing I did kind of on my left below, where the birds are facing different directions. It really kind of helps you to understand how that particular bird is made. So one of the hard things I find about birds, paintings, and drawings is they have a delicacy about them that sometimes can be hard to render. You want to kind of keep it really sweet and delicate. So, all right, sorry for my hair getting in the way here, but we will start the pastel painting after this. All right, here we go. I chose the PastelMat paper that's that brownish beige-ish color because the photo has a lot of blues in it that I wanted to kind of keep some of that blue cold feel, and I thought the warmer pastel color or PastelMat color of that paper would be better. Now I'm using a little mat here. I used to have mats that had openings of standard sizes, but I don't know where they all are. This one had, the exterior was an 8 by 10, which I liked. Now this is a just a little bird that I did. I actually forgot that I even painted it. It was in gouache, I believe, or acrylic. And these are these cute little canvases that actually have a magnet on the back. So you can, if you're, into acrylic or gouache or oil painting, they're kind of fun to do little paintings and give to friends as gifts. Now, here is the set of Terry Ludwig's. This is the Maggie Price Basic Set. If you saw my video, my 2020 video, about how excited I am about this new year because I have all these pastels, and you'll see me actually now choosing from this set based on this reference photo. So I wanted to put the camera at an angle where you could actually see my pastel choices. Obviously, we need some good darks. Now, in a minute, you'll see me take each one of these pastels and mark it on the pastel mat. Also, in the branches and things, obviously, there are some browns. And I wanted the background to be more subdued and muted. I've talked a little bit before about contrast, and that's one way to make your viewer look where you want them to look. So I want the most contrast in the bird, and he's going to have the darkest, I don't know why I think he's a he looks like a little boy bird. He's going to have the darkest values and the lightest values actually in this particular painting, and the rest of the painting is going to be much looser, and that will help to push it back and make the bird the focus. So I'm looking at the shadowy areas underneath his wing. I'm going to use some purples for that. So the little section you see of that little tray I was telling you is a great idea to hang on to these old pastel trays. The section closest to me, the first section, is the colors I'm using for the bird. The next section are the colors that I'm using for the background. Now, I do add more colors to this as I go. I try to hold them up while I am working so you can see it. But this Maggie Price set has a lot of bold colors. There's not a lot of neutrals. So really the only other colors I grabbed were neutrals. And maybe one other dark that was, believe it or not, a little darker than the one I chose at the beginning for that eye area of the bird. Also, too, notice the greens that I have in there. You might not think, well, that bird, why does she have purples and greens in there? Well, the purples are going to be a great base for shadows. And the greens, believe it or not, are a nice little shadowy color too. And I was just kind of seeing that in that photograph, even though it wasn't there. I know that's weird, but you get better at this the more that you do it. All right, let's actually put these up here so you can see. On this right side where I'm working now, I'm putting the colors that I will be using for the bird. And for the most part, these are the colors I used, except I did grab a bit more of some neutral blues, kind of to tone down those purples a little bit. All right, I am still going to use some of the darker values for the branches. These on the bottom here, these are the background colors and the branches. And now I'm just going to get a quick sketch in, kind of like a do-over of the other sketch that I did here. And I placed some lines there. Have you ever started to sketch something and it gradually moves and then it's not in the place you really wanted it to be artistically for a good composition? That's why sometimes I'll put little baselines where I want the lowest point of the bird and the highest point of the bird, and to try to keep it within that proportion or that range that I have set for it. All right, so now I'm just going to keep sketching here because you've already seen this one time, and then I'll jump in a minute. I didn't need to worry about getting overly detailed with the drawing because it's just basically to get me going, see where the bird is, and general proportions. As a matter of fact, after I sketch the bird in pastel, I end up really carving, creating his form more by carving around him, negative painting, rather than worrying about painting him perfectly. I like those loose edges. As a matter of fact, by the end of this painting, I wish I'd have kind of kept those loose edges a little more. I'm getting in my darkest values here on the bird with this darkest, it's really a really dark purple pastel. I don't think this is the Terry Ludwig color that's talked about so often. Eggplant, it's an awesome dark. It might be one value or one shade down from it. Now I'm using that blue. Again, these Maggie Price colors are very, very bright. It's great to put down bright colors to begin with. You can always tone them down by using a neutral or creating your own neutral. If you haven't seen my video on neutrals, what they are, how they're made, actually I think I have an exclusive video for my patrons on actually showing how to create some neutrals. It's basically by taking two complementary colors and combining them, and it neutralizes them, it dulls them out, and you can also add white to that to make it a lighter neutral. Now I know we think in pastels we can't do that, that's only for oil and acrylic, but you really can by layering over each other, especially if you don't overblend. If you just let those colors kind of show through each other, it's really kind of neat. Now this color I'm putting down is almost the color of the PastelMat paper, but it's a little bit, just a tad lighter, and I wanted to go ahead and get a layer of that down anyway to be able to blend some other colors on top of. Now I know when we're first starting out with pastels or any painting in general, there's a tendency to paint exactly what we see as far as colors go. And I think probably if you're my patrons, which you are if you're watching this video, the regular Monet Cafe is not going to get this voiceover part because y'all are special. But if you have seen, which I'm sure you have, much of my artwork, I do tend to over-exaggerate color and use colors often that aren't there. But a good tip for this is a lot of times shadowy areas, like in the photo of this bird, appear gray, dark brown. But a general artistic tip is to give them some coolness as far as color temperature. Make them more of a blue or more of a purple. In this case, I'm using green, even though I did not see that green in the bird itself. If you look directly at the photo and maybe took a little color swatch of it, I knew that that green would work. It's a little warmer than the blues that I'm using, and I just thought it worked value-wise and would give a little bit more color and interest to the bird. This bird would be really boring if I painted it exactly the same values and color, well, values, yes, but if I painted it the same colors that are in the reference photo. If you haven't seen my video I just made, I think before this one, on monochromatic painting, that was one you guys voted for. I gave an option of 3 different weekly, or in this case it was kind of a monthly challenge because there were 4 different videos or paintings in that video. But if you didn't see that one, I highly recommend you go back and look at it, because value is truly everything when we want a good painting to have a good foundation for your painting and it looks professional. But painting in one, this is my point, painting in one color family, like all blues, all oranges, all reds, or all yellows, whatever it is, take that color family and get all the different values. And in mine, I did 4 different paintings, and I've already gotten some great feedback that a lot of you loved that. It really did help you to focus on value. A lot of times we just get distracted by color. I've got another video I'm going to be doing coming soon, which is, I'll go ahead and tell you, I was going to make it a surprise. I'm going to be painting in the dark. All right, that sounds crazy, right? Well, it's not going to be pitch black dark, but I've often done this to where I have the lighting real low. I need to do this at night because my studio has some windows that let in too much light during the day. But when it's nighttime, I can open the door of my studio and have a light on in my hallway. It gives me just enough low light to see value. But color, that's what happens with color when the light decreases in a room, okay? Color decreases with the light. But wonderfully, you can still see the values. You can see, well, what's dark and what's light. So it's a really neat little way to learn to focus on value. And then the fun thing is that when you turn the lights on, you're like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought to put that color there. So it's really cool. Now I know my background is looking really messy right here, but I really want it to be loose and stay loose. I'm just getting in the dark values. You know, when I first started painting, my husband used to laugh at me because I would get to this stage right here. I call it the ugly stage. I've heard another artist, maybe it's Marla Baguetta, who says it's like the adolescent stage, you know, where you feel clumsy or awkward and, you know, things just don't seem quite right or beautiful yet. But it's all a work in progress, just like a painting. All right, there's some of the neutrals I just showed you that I'm going to be adding in the background. See that background right now, how bold it is in color, because that Maggie Price set is pretty bold. Now notice how I'm adding these neutrals. I'm adding a few more darks. I knew I needed a little bit more depth. Those are background trees, but you know, I'm imagining this. I couldn't see in the photo that great. They really did a neat effect, which is, it's amazing. Now iPhones do this, or phones do this automatically, but in the camera, you set your aperture to a really high number, no, I'm sorry, a low number, but a large opening, and it causes that blurry effect in the background. But I imagined that this was a forest, and there were lots of trees in the background and shadows. Some of them were very far away. And while the photo has them super blurry, I wanted some of them to still kind of show through. So I knew I needed some of those darker values in places to give it a little more interest. And, you know, if there was just a bird sitting on those branches and the whole background was just kind of a muted blue, it would be very boring. But at the same time, I didn't want the background to have so much going on that it draws your attention away from the bird. So it's this little ebb and flow of detail versus non-detail. And as a general rule, you want your main focal point to have more detail. It can have it just in a spot. I mean, this whole bird, by the end of the painting, I kind of wish I hadn't had him so detailed in his feathers, but he needs to have a little more detail than the rest of the painting and more contrast. Where you want the main focal point or point of interest in your painting needs to have that. And you achieve that with the contrast has to do with the value differences there. If you have value differences that are kind of just medium, like a medium blue and right next to that medium to a little bit darker blue, that's not a lot of contrast. High contrast is like right where you see that bird, the little black area under his neck as juxtaposed to the white. You notice if you just close your eyes and open your eyes going to go right there, okay, because of that contrast. So that's a way to control what you want to achieve in your painting and where you want people to look, the viewer to look. And again, I'm creating some of that contrast in other areas, but not overdoing it, because I don't want what'll happen is your painting will end up getting so busy that the viewer doesn't know where to look. Now I am adding some pinks in these branches. I did want a little bit of that warmth. You see I added kind of an orangey red. It is a tree branch, and I know it's kind of a cooler palette that I have, but I wanted to indicate that, yeah, this is a tree. Okay, you can add a little bit of that browny red warm color. And that's going to be another thing that draws your eye. You notice when I added that pink and that reddish color there, notice how your eye all of a sudden notices that, because it's not anywhere else in the painting. I do end up adding that in little light touches, actually some of that in the bird later. But again, it's a way to control how you want your final outcome of your painting by using detail, by using contrast, and by using color. You know, a certain color jumps out at you more than others. That would obviously be like your warmer colors, because they do come forward typically, whereas bluer colors and purples recede. So that's another way to control where your viewer looks. Now, this was where I was at I apologize. I think I missed a step or two in this when I was kind of carving the bird out. It's because I'm helping my husband on a home renovation project. So when I'm not painting, I am doing construction. Yeah, that's kind of crazy, right? But it's actually kind of neat. But it is kind of frustrating, though, when I get pulled away from my painting and then you have to kind of get back in the zone, you know? So anyway, that's why a little bit of this was missed. Now, I do like the looseness at this stage, but I got to get him, he's like a ball right now. I need to get a little bit more definition and his anatomy correct as far as being a chickadee. All right, I'm going to work a little bit here and put some music on, and you know me, I'll be back to jabberjaw at you guys some more. All right, enjoy. All right, I'm continuing to refine the bird more based on his markings, you know, what particular variety or species of bird this is. I thought I would add right here an artist that I absolutely love his bird paintings. His name is Mike Beeman. And notice how you don't necessarily see individual feathers as much as you do shapes and color used to portray it. And also noticed the lost edges. It's those soft edges where you don't have a lot of lines showing. So anyway, I can dream and strive to learn more about getting my artwork even more, my bird painting specifically, even more loose and impressionistic. Another thing I've found for me personally is that I find my painting, I'm more pleased with my painting overall if I do just that while working, is work it overall. Don't get too tedious or tied down in any specific place. That's why when I started the general bird painting, even though the shape wasn't just right, if I just got bogged down with getting that bird, what I end up doing is getting my bird overly detailed. And I did to a degree in this one too by the time it was done. I mean, that's just my personal taste. I love that work like Mike Beeman. I love that soft, loose, painterly, impressionistic feel. Oh God, I have a sip of coffee. But anyway, so that's a goal of mine, and I achieve that better when I work the whole painting. And also another thing that does is, actually right here I wanted to mention, I decided the bird was a little bit too chunky. So you see how I added that blue to make him a little thinner. And what I did is I just went in with that pastel. I'm just making the branch thicker because it really is in the reference photo. I like how he's kind of hunkered down, especially on his right foot. It would be the left in the painting, and then his other foot is kind of reaching out and holding on. But I needed that branch. If I was going to make him thinner, I needed the branch to be closer to him. So that's the neat thing about pastel painting, is that you really can make a lot of modifications and altering that, I didn't know that when I first started. And the more you do it, the more you realize, you've got a little bit of wiggle room. You don't want to abuse that, because if you overdo it, you'll end up having your painting overly layered. You'll have the colors will look more muted and less free and impressionistic. Oh, and by the way, in our very own Patreon group, we have an artist who is really great at bird paintings. He's been doing some lovely work. His name is Ricky. He's in our Susan Jenkins Patreon group on Facebook. You've probably seen his paintings already that he has shared, but you might want to check it out. He's just doing some beautiful work. So way to go, Rick. Your bird work is beautiful. Okay, I will keep painting here a bit, and again, there's some more neutrals that I added. I didn't have really more of those paled out blues that I needed to soften that purple that was underneath him and just lighten it up a bit too. I knew it was a darker value under his wing, but it wasn't quite as dark as that purple. So, kind of scumbling in these feathers is a way to lighten that area up. Okay, so just enjoy the rest of this for now. I will probably allow this to paint and you guys to observe for the rest of the video, and I'll come back in towards the end for some more comments. I've zoomed in more here because I wanted you to be able to see more how I'm going to identify that eye. The little chickadee's eye is so black, it's as black as the feathers around it. But to give the impression of that eye actually being in there, there's a little eye in a socket there, you add just a little highlight. I usually add it more towards, I think that one, kind of where I thought the back of the eye would be. And then I'm also adding a little highlight on the outer edge of that beak. Kind of like where the light is coming above it, and I think I add a little highlight under the tail too as well. It's almost like there's a little backlighting going on there behind the bird. So these big chunky Terry Ludwig pastels make that a little bit difficult, so I had to get a little bit closer and be more careful with that. Now I just wanted to show here to pay attention as I'm working on the background. The bird's pretty much done. I do think after I finished this painting, I softened up some of the edges a little bit more. I didn't like how the feathers were so obvious in some places, but for the most part, the bird was done. But from this point forward, pay attention to how I work the background. I'm adding different values and different lines to indicate branches and things far away. Again, if you want to give that impression of something being far away, less detail, less value, less color. All right, well, this is pretty much it for the cute little chubby chickadee painting, and I hope you're encouraged to try some bird paintings. You can use my reference photo I provided in this video if you would like, and please share it in our Patreon group on Facebook, Susan Jenkins Patreon group. So once again, thank you, patrons. You have blessed my life in more ways than I can describe. Thank you so much, and happy painting.